Hello and welcome to another modelling video. This is Alan from the Modelling Man at YouTube with another question and answer video. Last week, after a very brief YouTube break due to internet issues, we are completely back online and we've saw the lovely Zaku 2 model that I've recently published. I'm glad the feedback's great. You guys really enjoy it. I'm continually working on some more complex projects, and I've got a LARP event coming up. I'm crafting a few bits and pieces. I've made this lovely insignia on this beret, and I'm painting the company sigil on banners and stuff, since this isn't my preferred method of crafting. As you all know, I'm a model maker, but I'm pushing myself in the deep end to help in those regards, but I'm learning other things, and hey, we'll bring it back into the hobby. So after a few weeks, when this big event is done and dusted, we're going to heavily focus on the Gunpla Builders World Cup entry, which bits and pieces has been worked on, bits and pieces have been finished, the diorama is being designed, so all of that very soon. This is not an update video, we're going straight into questions and answers, and there's a lot of quality questions asked this time. Frisco, I probably pronounced your name wrong, very sorry. What's the easiest way, tips or tricks, to ensure that a Gunpla kit will fit properly after several layers of paint, primer and clear coats? Thank you. Now, what I normally do, as we've seen and talked about in previous videos, where the pegs and the holes are snapped together, I find to be very tight. They promote seam lines. They sometimes promote cracking of seam lines where you put the putty. I like to loosen up those holes with a knife or a drill bit, so they just comfortably, very loosely hold together, sometimes even capable of falling apart. They'll be glued together and puttied, or if it's colour separation, they'll be painted, and then they'll be PVA glued together, or they'll just be able to snap. Also, if they're able to still connect, and there's other joints that are not peg and hole joints, will be masked with blue tack. And when the parts are painted, where those areas that actually connect the model together is not building up with paint, it's only the surface detail. And this is the same with polycaps. If there's any polycaps that cannot be removed off the model because the two pieces are being glued together, those holes will have blue tack on top of them where it won't be visible to the model after painting. So mask your polycaps. Glue everything down even after painting, and when you have the peg and holes, widen the holes so they're a loose fit. If you get good at it, you should be able to loosen it where they snap together, but with just a little strength you can pull them apart without prying them open or whatever. If you make them too loose, they fall aparty, but you'll get the hang of it after a couple of high grades. So they're my two tricks: mask polycaps, widen those holes, mask any other places that connect that are not normally anywhere near as tight. Second question from the same gentleman: is a UV resistant top coat? Now we're talking about the Rattle Can by Mr. Hobby. They've got a clear matte and a clear gloss in a fairly tall white coloured Rattle Can that has UV protection written on it. Is a UV resistant top coat necessary for an acrylic or enamel paint kit? I normally use Pledge Clear. Should I buy a UV coat to prevent my existing painted Gunpla from fading? Thanks again. Interesting, I learned this from my first holiday in Japan, looking at hobby shops in Akihabara. Apparently, with Mr. Hobby and Tamiya, a lot of their range of hobby paints, and they call them hobby paints, not modelling paints, is because they don't only create products and pander to scale modelling and Gundam modelling, they also create products for other hobbies. Now there's a thing called ball jointed dolls, Dolphy Dreams, are these articulated anime-esque soft vinyl dolls, and they come in flesh tones, and you can dust on some paints to blush them up and paint makeup and lips and eyes and all sorts of stuff. Now the problem with these soft vinyl dolls and toys is because the majority of the colour is already its own flesh tone, under sunlight they fade and deteriorate rapidly. I believe that this is a product to help combat that, but I have no idea how effective it is because I have no connection to that community or other communities that got UV problems. Now, as you know, I've got a gigantic open window here that cops sunlight for about several hours a day because there's a house directly next to ours. And I've got a lot of models, some up there that's been on display for many, many years, with lacquer, enamel and acrylic, the good quality paints. They generally do not fade. Cheap top coats are actually more of a problem than paints because they can yellow. Pledge, Future Floor and Hobby branded top coats will not yellow over time. So generally your models are fairly safe unless they're under direct sunlight for many, many, many hours of the day. It's good to try to have your models away from a window, but they're generally not really going to fade. Snapped plastic kits. There were talk, I remember, on Facebook a week or 2 weeks ago that after a while plastic will yellow. Plastic will yellow, but it doesn't happen in a matter of a couple of years. I think it might have been the older plastic that Bandai and other manufacturers use, but after 20-30 years plastic will yellow, the white colour. But I'm not sure if that's just the old plastic or if that's actually 20-30 years. 20-30 years down the road, I don't even know if you're going to care about your Gundam models. But I'm pretty sure that they can yellow just due to a chemical breakdown that can happen in the box in darkness whenever. Because the kits I have that's yellowed were in boxes in the dark, or models that were given to me that are of that vintage. Jonathan Chin. I'm planning to copy a part of Natalie High Grade hair as it is made of rubber, and I intend to make a copy using some rubber material tool. But if I want to make it transparent. Any ideas? I have a couple of ideas. Now Natalie is a 00 Gundam from the anime Gundam 00. It's a high grade and it's got this terrible, terrible rubbery hair. I think it's absolutely terrible. You could look at, I wouldn't bother sculpting it because all they are just strands of a clear tube between 1-2 millimeters in diameter. I reckon if you had a look on eBay, craft shops, wherever, if you found the equivalent of just clear tubes and bunched them together and PVA glued them in the holes that its existing hair came out of, that would be far more effective. I know with 3D printing, since I'm into 3D printing now, you can buy about 200 grams worth of 1.75 millimeter spool of clear ABS or PLA. So this is 1.75 mil thick. It's for feeding into a 3D printer to melt down and make a model, but what you could use them for is cut them to length, band them together, PVA glue them together, stick them in the holes, and you'll have all the hair effects, because the hair is not detailed or complex enough that I would use a casting method or any sort of replicating method. It should be easy enough to scratch build as long as you find a clear, flexible tube material. And there's plenty out there, you know, might be attached to another product, $2 shop, eBay. But if I was to buy something online for under a few dollars, I reckon just a tiny amount of a few hundred grams of clear spool for a 3D printer. Though, just use your imagination, look around the house, any sort of clear thin material. Majin Milo. Hi, Mokonolan. I am just starting to get into scratch building and super detailing of my Gunpla kits, and have noticed how amazing it looks when people split the armor parts in smaller pieces, giving more detail. I was wondering firstly, How do I go about getting two identical pieces after I cut to be symmetrical? Also, what would you find the best material to use to recast sprues? I want to build a Cassatria with a Cassatria repaired by remodeling some sprues to replicate the wings and legs. I hope these aren't too confusing. Thanks. Replicating a whole sprue, as we know that a sprue is the runner, the whole sheet with multiple parts on it. Casting it in a material like resin would be extremely difficult. You'd lose materials. There would be all sorts of problems. You can cast individual pieces, which is also very complicated, but that is resin casting techniques and methods of the hobby. There is lots and lots of tutorials on resin casting, and there's lots of products on the market. What little I know about resin casting, advice I can give with pieces that are that small, you want to use a slow drying, very fluid resin. So something that's got a higher velocity. So when you go to the resin shop or online, high velocity resin, slow drying. Very, very important, because resin's got a factor of drying really fast, but then taking a long time to harden. This will make it so you won't have giant air bubbles and a terrible job cleaning up. But your first job is to go online, Google, and research resin casting and see what's possible, what's not possible. Replicating entire sprues is a bit unethical because it's violating Bandai's copyrights, and you might get in trouble in some communities. Another thing, GentaiKits.com, a website in Japan, they do the best runner and Bandai parts service. So if you want to buy multiple runners or just one runner from a kit, if you contact GentaiKits.com, they will be able to, within a month to a couple of months, fairly reasonably in shipping and cost of buying parts. Buying parts is an expensive business. They will buy multiple parts of one runner off the Cassatria for your project. So that is a second option besides casting. Now into your scratch building detailing, so cutting pieces of armour. The best trick to do that is to find or buy a fine tooth hobby saw. There's one used in the railway modelling community that's very effective that I like to use. There's miniature bone saws. XL makes a good saw at about $30. It's full metal. Just look for just a fine tooth skinny saw. Most hobby shops sell them, or websites that carry hobby supplies. And you'll probably want to buy a ruler and vernier calipers. Calipers are used by engineers to measure parts. The best advice I can give is practice, practice, practice. You're going to be a bit sloppy and a bit hard. Cutting is a skill that you need to learn, practice, and get good at. Just pretty much practice cutting some runners and spare parts that you don't want to use before you hack into your actual project. Your first project's not going to be perfect, but measure where you want to make your cuts, draw a line, indent a panel line with a hobby blade where you want to cut, and just cut directly down that line is the best way to get it absolutely as accurate as possible. Clean up the sides with sandpaper. It is a very lengthy process, but it is very rewarding, very worthwhile. Don't go overly ambitious in your first heavy modification scratch build project. Do something a little basic, a little easy, and just get a bit more extreme every time you do further projects. And it doesn't have to be a whole model. It could be just a piece. The first piece you modify, do a very basic modification, and as you get a little more confident, a little more of an advanced modification, a little more advanced. So they're my tips on getting absolute accuracy. Tob Stubbs, I'm sorry if I pronounce your name wrong. Is it okay if I use a hobby knife for making my own seam lines? And also about plaplates or styrene plating. How can I achieve a round curve shape similar to this? A picture was provided of a It sort of looks like a curved broken piece of eggshell, some sort of moldable fiberglass plastic. I'll put the image in the description bar, titled flexible or curved styrene plate. Hobby blades are perfectly fine for making panel lines. The problem is their blade's very fine, so the line is going to be very fine. You'll want to widen it or fatten it up, so you can initially cut the line with the knife very, very carefully. Turn around and use the back end of the knife near the points to widen it, because if it's only as thin as the blade and you paint it, panel line's going to disappear. You'll want to make it deeper, you'll want to make it wider, so make sure you rub the back of the knife through your panel line to widen it as much as you can, so when paint and primer is applied, your panel line is still going to be visible. Practice on some spare parts first, and just chuck on a bit of hand paint to see if you like the look of it before you attack a model. Flexible styrene plate. Now, I like using styrene just as a flat surface, cut shapes out, glue it on. I can curve and contour plastic plate around a curved surface. To make it curved by itself is very tricky. Some modelers choose to do it, either applying a heat or bending it and applying adhesive and waiting for it to dry in that shape, or vac forming. All of these techniques are very complicated and have all sorts of risks involved, with high chances of failure unless you're experienced and been doing it for a long time. I like a method that I can bend and hold its shape and glue into place. I think half mil brass or copper sheeting cut to shape. You can bend it with your fingers, tools or pliers, glue it into place, and unless you hit the model really hard or try to bend it in the opposite direction, it will hold its shape. I think metal is a far more superior material than plastic in curved shapes regarded. I would recommend watching my Gunpla Builders World Cup series on the DOM, on the diorama, with the Zimuth armour and the big axe. I had to extend the back of its tail and its legs, which was a curved surface, and all of those was utilising brass. My last year's build, which had a lot of curved surfaces as well, the medieval armoured Gundam pieces, also utilised brass. I've been using it for a few years now, and I'm very comfortable with that material, and it just applies to surfaces using super glue. Again, it's going to require its own tools. You'll need to buy tin snips to cut the brass successfully, and probably a hammer for flattening it out, and maybe an automotive dolly for shaping it, unless you're happy to do it with your pliers or fingers. I believe, I do not remember, if you search my channel, there should be a tutorial working with metal, or at least talking about the tools and whatnot. Have a look at that. If you can't find it or it doesn't exist, send me a message and I'll give a little further coaching. I might even talk about it in my next question and answer video, and we'll see how we go. So that's the way to go. Tim Berkwiz 3. Again, I'm pronouncing names wrong. A bit tired this week. I'm currently going through a creative block. What do you do when you have moments when creativity doesn't come to you as easily? Should I blame my backlog? Take a break from modelling for a while? Okay. This happens a lot to more experienced modelers, where you've been building. It's like burning out. You've probably done a lot of ambitious projects. You've probably done a lot of complex and amazing builds. You probably had to do them within time restraints for competitions, and you're building to standards of competitions, group builds. You're probably a bit tired, and you're burnt out, and it's not as fun because you're working with certain constraints. One, never blame your backlog. Sometimes you just buy a kit fresh off the shelf. Sometimes you pull a kit out of your backlog. Sometimes you can grow out of your backlog. You buy a kit many, many years ago that you really love and you want to build, and later on you're just not as interested. Never blame the backlog. Generally, just be as comfortable as you want to be. If you do grow out of a group of kits, if the kits are very old and rare, probably sit on it for a while until you can get a desirable price. If you've grown out of the kit and it's common as, gift it, sell it, second-hand sell it, trade it. There's no harm in cutting down your backlog because the models have been there for a long time and you thought they were very cool when you were a beginner modeler or a different state of a modeler, and now you're not interested anymore. What I recommend in a creative block is that you're probably not interested in any model that you have in your backlog. You want to build something but you're not too sure. Taking a break is alright for a couple of weeks. Once the break starts going into months to years, you'll be commenting and hanging around modelling boards, but it'll be harder and harder to get back into the hobby. What I recommend is don't look at your backlog. Go to a hobby shop and just look at anything that might take your fancy. It's just a very basic model. I recommend anything that you have not built previously. So if you're a Gundam modeler, have a look at the tanks, planes, ships, cars. Look at something that's, pretty small, looks pretty basic, not too expensive, that just catches your fancy. I always recommend tanks, S model. Pick up a brand spanking new model you've never built before. Like I said, if you've never built a tank, I always highly recommend tanks. And just have a go first at building it out of box. Colour scheme on the box, no modifications, and just have fun with it. Work on it when you feel like it. Glue, build, whatever. And you might find a new joy in the hobby by just looking at a completely different project. If you're a far more advanced modeler, maybe a different medium is appropriate. If you've been working with styrene for God knows how long, have a crack at a resin kit. It's almost like a completely different or new hobby, and it's very, very refreshing. E2046 has some very cheap figures and mecha subjects, so just have a search around for a different subject resin kit that's not too expensive. Soft vinyl, which is a dying form of modelling. It's really hard to find a model, but the odd subject does appear on eBay, semi-affordable. That is something that's completely bizarre and different to work with. There's a guy from Thailand that sells PVC models, which was a terrible experience, but as absolutely challenging and strange for me. So it's almost like delving into a different hobby. Metal figures, metal wargaming figures. You can buy some very nice multi-parts complex looking stuff. There's a series of wargaming figures called Dystopian Wars. They've got these really big giga steampunk continental war subjects. I think they're very cool. That might be something cool to check out. Just build a one-off model that's a different subject and out of the box, have fun with it, and then see how you feel after then. It's probably a lot better, a lot more healthier than just watching TV or playing video games, as you're still involved in the hobby, and it might help you pull you out of the burnoutness or your lack of creativity, and make sure it's focused on a non-competition, so you're not building it to a deadline of a competition. And that should be fun. Stephen Burnside. First, lol. This is the first time I have seen you laugh in a video. Fair enough. I make a lot of videos across a lot of platforms. I don't remember if I laugh or not a lot in the Mokono Man. And there'll be another question later on that I'll be talking about the different channels. So we'll get back to that. On another note, do you have any tips on building a homemade spray booth for extracting lacquer fumes? I do not want to accidentally blow myself up or pollute the air, my small area. I use Gundam Mr. Hobby paints. Thank you very much. My advice is go online and you'll want to buy what's known as a brushless or barrel fan. You can buy them very cheap. Now, most fans that we know, or extraction fans, run that has these little metal brushes that brush up against the rim to create the friction to spin the fan. And as these little brushes are hitting metal, they're sparking. And as you mix combustible gases with air, you got chances of sparking. Now, what most likely will happen is if you, as a worst case scenario, and it's very unlikely this will ever happen because a lot of people spray lacquers and use brush fans, is you're spraying lacquer paint or lacquer thinner directly into the fan. Just the right mixture of combustible thinner and air and a spark happening at the same time will ignite. You might have a flash of a flame, go and it'll immediately extinguish because there's not enough material. If you have flammable materials, or if you spilled lacquer on your table or something, you might have a small flame, could be dangerous. But generally the risk is very low, regardless. Brushless or barrel fans are very, very cheap on eBay and other electrical suppliers and online. So just buy a brushless fan, whatever wattage you see appropriate. The stronger, the bigger, the better in general. Make sure the hose that's attached to the back of the fan is sealed and is wide enough that it's not going to backlog and just re-spew back out in your face. So thick enough hose. I'm thinking anything thicker than the hose on your vacuum cleaner. Your local hardware store should have air conditioning style hose or pool flexible hose. And yeah, again, just a brushless fan. Should not be expensive at all. Okay, continuing up, lots and lots of questions. Gunpla fixation, my buddy. Fist pump. Shout out to the PhD Manchild. I did say shout out to highly appropriate. Haven't gotten any, but that's alright. I make multiple channels on YouTube, and I haven't talked about this for a long time. The kind of man is, I would not say a character, but I try to make myself as conservative and professional as possible. I know there's a lot of people in the hobby, a lot of different people with different community standards. Some people do not like to talk politics, religion, don't like swearing, do not like overly sexualized content. So I try to be as nice as possible and present the kind of man just to present modelling tips, tricks, facts and builds as plain as possible, as to be open to as many people who speak English and as not to feel that they're driven away, to feel that they're not welcome because of race, religion, background, political stance, whatever. This is a free political, free religious zone. And regardless of whatever your thoughts, how extreme or how normal, everyone is welcome to watch the Makana Man and interact with the Makana Man. And I'll do my best to try to be as PC and clean as possible. In real life, and for anyone that knows me, I can be not so political correct, not so PG, particularly people that go to the workshops in Melbourne. We like to have a bit of fun, we like to, you know, get a bit cheeky, have a bit not so conventional jokes, we'll say for now. And the PhD Manchild is, even though probably an over-exaggerated character, it's sort of me to vent out and just have fun on camera. I watch a lot of other YouTubers. There's a lot of accounts I watch on things like news and politics and religion and whatnot, where they sort of just over-exaggerate their own existing character, have fun, throw in other characters, swear, tell jokes, do all sorts of fun things. And I see people just run a blog or a vlog and they just talk on a camera, just spouting out their opinions or whatever for 5 minutes and directly uploading. I'm a bit jealous of this because Makana Man YouTube channel video takes a lot of effort. The model has to be made, all the process is documented, edited, dubbed. It goes up there where a PhD Manchild, which on the themes, I talk about a lot of things that I'm interested in. I review anime, I drink alcohol, I cover events, I talk about all sorts of things that I find interesting in the modelling community that I do not want to talk about on this channel because it violates what the Makana Man is all about. I'll put a link down below just watch a video. If it's not your thing, do not be offended. I'm not going to push any of that sort of stuff on this channel. If you watch the two channels, you'll understand what I'm all about. Some people watch the PhD Manchild only and think that I'm a self-centered asshole prick. And they'll come here and they think I'm an overly nice person. Both are not the fact. Somewhere in the middle, I'm just an asshole. Though it's not for everybody, but it's fun, and it's just covers things I enjoy. I actually want to cover some tobacco topics on there fairly shortly. I run the third YouTube channel as well. It's only a couple of years old, and it covers just documents directly my LARP. And all it is just filming the odd duel or fight in front of me, a part of the warband I serve, as well as mounting a camera on my armour and actually going in full battle. So we'll record from the start to the end of the night, every single fight, every single battle that I'm involved in, as well as larger events. I'll put a link down there below. That would probably definitely not interest many people at all, as it's different hobby, a different thing. It's very physically active, and I have been interested in martial arts and swordsmanship for probably even longer than I've been running the what kind of man. I've probably been fighting with swords for over 10 years, but these are just things that I do. And yeah, there's the shout out. I would like to see the community around the PhD Manchild to get a bit more filthy, a little more bigger, and a lot more fun. Another shout out I'll probably get, which is my personal project, since we're all getting into that, on Facebook. We've got a Facebook group called Older Gunpla Forums. And the general gist of that is a lot of Facebook groups are very restrictive. They've got rules, they've got sponsors, they've got all sorts of things going on. So you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't talk about this taboo subject, you can't do that, you can't confront people. The idea of that one is just to bring up the old spirit of what the old forums were like during the 2000s, the modelling forums. Has a lot of veteran modelers that are there on hand to help you, as well as just an open forum to express, talk about, and do as you please, judged by your peers. So if you are doing the wrong thing, you're not going to be punished by an admin or a moderator. You will be judged by the very people that are part of the community. And that's all the shouting out that's personally around me. Now, these cover all of the YouTube questions. I've got a couple of PMs and a couple of other Facebook questions I'll cover now, and then we'll wrap up with a couple of shout-outs. This is Anonymous. Assuming Tamiya primer will thin with industrial lacquer thinner, also, would it be compatible with Mr. Hobby? I actually lifted this from a video. I think this is an excellent question. Lacquer thinner is a universal chemical. It's generally got the same strength, probably different smells. I use automotive strength, commercial automotive strength lacquer thinner bought from an automotive shop in large quantities of 4 or 5 litres. I've used one from a hardware shop. General purpose thinners also works. I'm not too much of a fan of it, but I know a lot of prominent modelers like the Ghost of Xeon uses that for both his lacquers and acrylics. It is possible, and on top of that, lacquer is just universally compatible. You are actually capable of mixing Mr. Hobby and Guy Note paints to create a different paint, as well as using Mr. Hobby retardant and other additives in any type of lacquer paint. So all lacquer paints, all lacquer thinners, all lacquer additives are universal and can swap over. So yes, so Tamiya primer can be thinned with any lacquer thinner, and I actually personally use Mr. Hobby retardant in it. Ryan asks on Facebook, Sir, good day. I would like to ask if it is applicable for enamel paints to be used in an airbrush. Thank you. Enamel paints are traditionally a hand brush paint. A long time ago, it was the only type of paint modelers used. Anything that can be thinned can be airbrushed. I have airbrushed enamels for a while. I think they're pretty good, but I've grown out of them in acrylics because I just find lacquers superior. Though I really used to like to use enamels as they were a little smoother, a little easier to control than acrylics. They are a pain, but they take a long time to dry, but because they take so long to dry, you could be a lot more casual with your airbrushing. You can load up your paint, you can spray a bit, you can have a smoke, a drink, or walk around the house and keep going knowing that the needle will not dry out, unlike lacquers or acrylics. The only problem is once you spray your model, you have to put it away and not touch it for a very extended period of time. And occasionally when I feel a model paintwork has been very fragile because it's multiple fine layers, I sometimes put a clear coat of clear gloss enamel for extra scratch resistance, and it's probably a good idea for transformable kits, which I think I might have missed a question, and I'll quickly go back. But yes, enamels is very appropriate for airbrushing. I just got this question today in the video. Can you show how you prime your parts? Generally all of my reviews on primers, Guy Notes Tank Primer, Tamiya Primer, Mr. Hobby Surfacer 500, 1500 actually demonstrates how I prime, talking about how to thin, use retardants, whatnot. I believe one or two of my videos on honing your airbrush skills directly talks about and demonstrates the application of primer, the harms primer does on your airbrush, maintenance while keeping primer in mind, especially Mr. Surfacer 500. There is a lot of content on that. I do not think I will dedicate a video just for priming parts because I have done so many videos on priming it's not funny, and I think honing your airbrush skills will cover more priming. And if more priming products, I actually want to review more primer products, and they will also demonstrate how to prime as well. So have a look at those videos. Now, just bear with me. I am absolutely sure I missed a question, and I'm going to cover it because I do not want anyone to feel left out. Okay, here we go. Corn Wizard, my friend, I am very sorry I missed your question. Hello, how do you paint inner frame pieces on a transforming master grade like the Rezeal Zeta or H2 without having the piece becoming too tight and affecting the transformation? Thanks a lot. I've got limited experience with transforming models. I actually built a couple, and I model it, build it and assemble it in a way where it stays in one position with no playable ability. Though it is possible that I have come across parts where they're very likely to brush up against each other and scratch the paint. You can modify a kit to the point where it's fully painted and transformable and playable, but this process is very complex, very, very advanced, and takes a lot of work. First thing you do, as you always do, is you snap your model together to inspect to see if you need to do further work like seam line filling, modifying, whatever. And also keeping in mind what I've talked about in the previous question about making parts fit for painting, that you widen the holes of the pegs and you mask peg holes and pegs and other areas that connect butt joints. Polycaps with blue tack before painting. But there's parts where there'll be a lot of parts moving. There'll be parts brushing up against each other. There'll be overlaying armour that's moving around on some of your more complex kits like the unicorns, the perfect grade unicorns. What you need to do is study the friction of the parts, play with each articulated joint, see where it's likely going to scratch paints, and you need to pull those parts apart, get files, sandpaper, whatnot, and you need to file those parts that scrap up against each other until there is a clearance of like 1/2 mil to 1 mil where you know paint can be applied and it's still not going to be touching. So do that to all pieces after studying that you think you're going to touch up. It's going to involve putting your kit together, pulling it apart, sanding and putting back together a lot. And once you're happy with all of that, you reckon no parts are going to scratch, during the painting process, the kit needs to be primed, regardless, lacquer primer. You want to consider the type of paints, something that's the most scratch resistant as possible. Enamels or lacquers. I reckon enamels is far more important. Apply the enamels, allow the maximum amount of time to dry and cure, 3 days to 5 days. Multiple coats of clear coats, definitely an enamel. And then areas that are still likely to overlap, to scrape each other, you want to apply the tiny bit of petroleum lubricant. And just hope and pray that after all that work that you've been vigilant enough to check each section that they're not going to scrape up against each other. I think that would be a way to possibly make a transformable kit playable after painting. It is a lot of work. Honestly, I think it's better that you build and paint a kit and keep it in the one position in a statuesque type manner, just to do some basic posing. If you like both or multiple forms of the transformation, it might actually be worth considering buying multiple kits and having it in its transformable modes, unless you're a part of the community that likes to play with transformer toys, which nothing wrong with that, but it does get tricky when paint is introduced and involved. And even with all those tips and tricks on top, there is no guarantee that paint damage can still occur. And you just have to be very confident in your painting ability that areas won't be too thick and whatnot. Also consider trying to swap some parts out, joints or polycaps with magnets, and scratch building other connecting or articulated joints and parts that would consider paint if you're at that level of modelling. Now, thank you very much for participating in this video and providing me with questions to answer. I hope everyone who's asked questions have gotten something out of it. I've hope that anyone with future questions will participate in future videos. Just because I run this on a monthly basis, it still does not mean you can't communicate me via Facebook, video comment section or private message. Anything I get on those 3 platforms that is written in the form of a question, I will address. Anything that's a general comment, sometimes I'll participate, sometimes I won't. I am a bit busy, and you do get quite a bit of comments on your social network and YouTube channels, but I always try, even if it takes a few days for me to get around to, address anything that is formed in a form of a question, unless my life is very hectic. But as always, please be patient, and I will definitely get back to you. Thank you very much for participating. Thank you very much for supporting the channel. This will occur again next month. And just a shout out to the Gunpla Builders Australia Facebook group. They are doing a group build called Wing It, based off Gundam Wing models. So anybody that feels like they would like to be a part of a group build, it's going for the rest of this month and next month. You can participate. Lovely prizes. I believe the Gundam UK Facebook Gunpla group is finishing up a competitional group build, so if that's too late for you to get involved in, there'll be a lot of lovely models to comment and look at. DC23 Mecha Arts Facebook community and page, as well as Don's Instagram account, has features a lot of lovely work, and that is very much worthwhile looking into. I did get one request to shout out a group. I'm not too sure if their intention was just for the Facebook feed or for the channel, but there is one Facebook group. It's a very big one. I will not address or talk about on this channel. They're a bit controversial, in my personal opinion, in behaviour of how people treat each other and comment on each other's works. They will be the only community I refuse to shout out. unless obviously they change and pick up their community attitude. But that aside, anybody else I don't have a gripe with, and more than happy to talk about them. There is a lot of communities out there. Just because you're a part of one or two that are very big and impersonal does not mean you can't go digging, talk to people that are from your country, your local community, and see what other Facebook, Instagram, YouTube communities are out there, forums. A lot of places are gathering together trying to form local communities, and if possible actual local personalised meetups, as well as events that you can turn up to in the flesh in real life. So if there's any opportunity like that arrives, definitely support it, and it's just going to make the modelling experience for you and your local community a lot more worthwhile. And if you have an opportunity to start it or be involved in it, give it a go. It is very, very rewarding. Thank you very much, not PhD Manchild. Gunpla Fixation, she got me. Man, signing out. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, until next time. Catch you guys later.